What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the MSC Sports Card Podcast. I'm your host, Clayton. Really appreciate you guys joining me on this week's episode. Super excited to get into it, but before we get into this week's episode, just want to take a minute and thank you guys for all support on the first episodes. Trying to just put these out, as you guys know, bringing you guys some insight, some hobby news, my stories. Just want to create a space where I can share those things with you guys. If you haven't already, head on over to Instagram, medalist_sportscards. Leave a follow over there. Shoot me a DM if you have any questions, ideas for the podcast, etc. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to click the thumbs up. That really helps out on the video. Leave a comment, same thing. Suggestions, negative, positive, whatever you guys got. Hobby topics, debates, etc. Love to talk about the hobby. And then if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to leave a review. Really appreciate those, and it goes a long way to helping me grow this podcast and my channel. So now let's get into this week's episode. All right, guys, in this week's episode, bringing you guys a really cool interview with AM _sportscards, Austin. He is a Northeast Ohio guy as well. He's a senior in high school, plays baseball, he plays a little football, multi-sport athlete. He's getting ready to go to college this summer. He's actually an employee over at One of One Sports Card Shop in Strongsville. If you guys haven't seen those guys on Instagram, go check them out. One of One Sports Card Shop. They do breaks, they do sales. They got a great shop over in Strongsville. It just opened up last year. Great interview with him. We talk about how he's grown his brand, his channel, his Instagram from nothing to now 5,000 followers. We talk about how he balances life, sports cards, working at a shop, and getting ready to go to college. And we talk a little bit about just the football market, the basketball market, hobbies, the sports, everything. PSA submissions. We check a lot of boxes with that interview. Really great coming up. But before we get into that interview, just want to give you guys the weekly hobby rundown this week. Two kind of highlights I wanted to talk about. First one is the LeBron James record-breaking sale. What a thing this is for the hobby. LeBron James 2003-2004 Exquisite Collection Rookie Patch Auto out of 23, BGS 9 graded with awesome subgrades, including a 10 on centering, 9.5 on edges, 8.5 on corners, and a 10 on surface. Beautiful subgrades. Sold privately brokered sale through PWCC for record-breaking $5.2 million. This card breaks the Logo Man Luka Doncic 1 of 1 record that was sold for a little over $4 million a couple months ago. Is the highest basketball card sale of all time, tying the Mickey Mantle PSA 9 that sold a couple months ago for $5.2 million. So it's right up there with the greatest cards of all time. This card now is sold for. This is awesome for the hobby. Selling a LeBron James card for $5.2 million brings so much great attention to the hobby. I've had 8, 9, 10 people reach out to me who kind of knew I do sports cards and saw the notification, reached out to me, said, "What is going on? Why is this card selling for $5.2 million? You were right. How do I get into sports cards?" All these questions start to swirl. I don't see how this is a negative thing for the hobby at all. If you go through Instagram, you see the negative comments on slab stocks, on other posts about the sale, saying how this raises prices for everybody. The hobby's out of control. We're in a bubble. This is the peak. It's all downhill from here. We said the same thing about every record-breaking sale, every record-breaking world record or best ever performance on the court. You name the best ever, it's eventually going to get broken again. That's just how this world works. This is how the economy works. This is great. The attention it brings is awesome. I talk a little bit about this with Austin in the interview. I kind of made the thoughts about it that the people who are buying $5.2 million cards are not the same people that we're dealing with, most of us are dealing with on a regular basis as far as buying and selling, we'll say $50,000 to $5,000 cards or $10,000 cards even. These people who are buying $5.2 million cards are buying these as investments, as personal collection pieces, as sit on top of the mantle at their fireplace and show off to friends, etc. Us grinding $500,000, $150 cards is a completely different sector of the hobby. I think there's only beneficial for these big sales for us in the hobby on the, we'll call it lower end pieces comparative to $5 million cards. So for me, this is great. Super excited to see where this takes the hobby, the next steps it takes. I have 2 people already set up on Zoom calls next week to talk about sports cards with me and wanting to get into this. And it all stemmed from this LeBron James $5.2 million sale, where they got the notification through sources outside of the hobby, outside of even just an ESPN notification. One saw it through a local news station, and then one saw it through, I think it was Yahoo or CBS. They got a news notification push, just like a record-breaking news for a normal, everyday news story. So again, awesome for the hobby. Super excited to see where this takes us. Next thing I want to talk about is this is releasing on Thursday, finishing up this morning, the night of the first round of the draft. Just wanting to talk to you guys a little bit about that. I'm not going to sit here. There's mock drafts out there. We know it's quarterback loaded. We know it's wide receiver loaded, etc. But I think you got to guys to pay attention. Every year this happens. There's a lot of new names that come in. Last year's names obviously are now second nature. The Joe Burrows, the Justin Herberts become second to Trevor Lawrence. The Chase Claypools, the T. Higgins, the Justin Jeffersons become second to Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, etc. They become the new hot thing. Just be careful building into this NFL draft as far as where things go, your current potential holdings with last year's draft class. Just keep a close eye on it. I don't think you should be worried, because I think that last year's draft class was extremely strong and showed that they can be extremely strong going into this season. I don't think there's going to be a lot of overlap. There potentially could be with let's say, the Bengals drafting a wide receiver, overshadowing a guy like T. Higgins. There's not going to be much quarterback competition. Different teams are taking different quarterbacks from last year. Joe Burrow, Tua, Jalen, Justin pretty much have their jobs locked up. But I talk a little bit in the interview with Austin about how there is a concern when it comes to those young quarterbacks as far as teams, as far as making playoffs, as far as making playoff pushes. It's extremely tough for these young quarterbacks in the position they're in on the teams and the divisions and the current standings to potentially make a playoff push and kind of live up to the numbers they're currently earning. So just keep that in mind. Not necessarily a hobby rundown, but just wanted to kind of make sure you guys are aware that the NFL draft is happening. Product will begin to drop over the next couple months as 2020 product wraps up. 2021 product will start to drop. And draft picks, I believe, even drops over the next couple weeks. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I'll give you guys a play. I don't give you guys many plays, kind of where my mind's at with this. I'm going around picking up a lot of colored Optic Select Prism of wide receivers, running backs, and guys like Tua and Jalen Hurts. Stuff that's relatively cheap that I can mass in bulk. I can potentially grade out with SGC and CSG, which I'm going to kind of touch on here at the end of the podcast as well. My thoughts on those two companies a little bit more. But potentially amassing those in bulk, sending some off to grading, keeping some color set aside in raw. And as the season kind of builds up, potentially selling off some of those as the season builds, or potentially if they have a good run here, maybe look like a Pro Bowl player going into the Pro Bowl, maybe selling off some of those, a playoff push by a team that was kind of not supposed to make the playoffs, a surprising team or a surprising player when it comes to those positions. They are extremely risky. Obviously, investing in wide receivers, running backs come with the risk of injury very highly in football, but I'm diversifying across multiple people, diversifying across color, and hoping that it being a low risk, high reward investment, buying $10 to $30, $40 cards potentially is, obviously that card could go to 20, it could go to 15, it could go to 10. But at the same time, that card could easily run up and double in price, and obviously grading those kind of bakes in a little bit of a profit. So that's kind of my play, my take on the NFL draft. Take it or leave it. Do your own research, obviously. I talked about this before on podcasts. Do your research. Don't base it off of my plays. Don't go listen to other podcasts or other Instagrammers and make the plays off of those. I saw a play the other day. I reposted it to my story about the Justin Herbert Mosaic PSA 10s, how they dipped. There are millions of cards at PSA. I am sure there are thousands of Justin Herbert Mosaic PSA 10 or Mosaic base cards, including PSA 10s at PSA, ready to be graded. So just be prepared as those hit the market. Those are things you really need to think about. You need to understand the risks of population growing very quickly as PSA sends cards back. Just because they're not accepting doesn't mean they're not sending out cards. So those kind of things are my caveat to my play this week of potentially looking at 2020 cards, especially over the next couple months as new products release. Devontae Smith's card come out? Does that affect a guy like Justin Jefferson's cards? A guy like Trevor Lawrence's cards come out? Does that affect a guy like Joe Burrow or Jalen Hurts or Tua Tagovailoa as those guys become second thoughts? So for now, guys, I'm going to get into the interview with Austin. Really appreciate him coming on. A great interview with him. Enjoy that, and I'll loop back around with you guys post-interview. All right, guys, here with Austin, AM _SportsCards on Instagram. Appreciate you joining me this evening, catching me after some meetings, school, work, etc. I appreciate you coming on, but tell us a little bit. I'll let you kind of tell your full story about, like, first off, how you got into cards. I think that's kind of an interesting journey everybody has, as well as kind of what your current life is like now as far as like buying and selling, as well as like your personal life and kind of your story a little bit.
Yeah, so I got into it my freshman year. I'm currently a senior in high school. I sat down with a guy that a lot of you guys may know, my buddy Chad. He is CB _SportsCards. He's been in the hobby for probably close to a decade, maybe more. But we were sitting at lunch, literally just joking around about cards because I had done like little patch cards and base cards and stuff like that when I was, much younger with my friends. And I was like, hey, what if I got back into this? And believe it or not, I ended up getting back into it probably a week later. And then I really didn't think it would take off this much, but over time I was really able to, grow my brand and just kind of actually have a following and make different friends, network and whatnot. So that's
So
kind
how
of
long have you been, we'll say, growing your brand? How long have you kind of been growing your brand where you've legitimately put in time to Instagram and eBay and legitimately growing AM SportsCards?
I want to say probably when the shutdowns happened for COVID is when I really kind of like put a lot of time in it because I had a lot of downtime. But 2018 to kind of the end of 2019ish, it was really just kind of collecting, and I was trying to flip here and there, and I didn't really do much grading at the time. Nothing really huge to help grow my collection in terms of value and stuff like that. Kind of just doing a lot of PC stuff. And then when shortly before COVID hit, I was like, all right, the market's growing. I'm really gonna kind of start taking this more seriously. And I got into grading and just little things like watching eBay and talking to people in DMs the right way and becoming reputable, whether it be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, eBay, and then trying to further my outreach to places like My Slabs, which I'm sure we've talked about at some point, and just different platforms for meeting different people and selling, buying and selling.
So you're a student, you're a high school student getting ready to go to college. So you're dealing with the scholarships. Obviously, you mentioned you're committed to go to Ohio State University, all that stuff. You're an athlete. We'll talk a little bit about working in the card shop that you work out of in Strongsville. So like you also obviously then do your own inventory. You do your own buying and selling. How do you balance all of this? I mean, you're
so
what, 18, 19, and you're balancing all of this
17.
and like
Yeah.
juggling. 17, even better. You're juggling multiple jobs because I was obviously a student athlete, still am an athlete. Like even in high school, it's having, you have the full-time job of being a student and you have the full-time job of being an athlete, and
Exactly.
you balance then a whole side job on top of another side job. So tell us a little bit about all of that balancing life.
So it's really crazy. I've always wanted to kind of break this down for a while. So school and baseball, when baseball season rolls around, it gets really, really hectic. But I've kind of always been this guy that's always wanted to be busy with something, but kind of a task that is, something that's not busy work, something that's actually, important, that feels, important to me. So, when school and baseball are over, I'm just the type that I'm not tired. I don't want to rest. I kind of want to go, I want to do something. So obviously, being able to do cards and also be able to work is something that I love. So I think I've been able to manage it just because of my passion that I have for it. It doesn't get boring for me. I love being able to go to work as much as I can each week. Obviously I'm limited, I have games on the weekend, and games during the week. So I have limited hours there, but I still love, going out to the shop and working. Shout out to the guys at One of One. But
yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about One of One. So it's funny. So like I live in Northeast Ohio as well, and One of One's just outside on the west suburb of Cleveland for people for reference who have obviously probably seen them on Instagram or been in a break or seen posts or etc. And I actually connected, I think, with somebody through messaging when you guys first opened a while ago, and was like, "Oh, cool! Like I didn't know, I'd never seen you guys on Instagram until I saw you were opening a shop." And I think I saw it through maybe Ryan in Columbus, Car Collector 2. I think I did like reposted or something, and I was like, "Shoot, this shop's like 30 minutes from my house."
Mm-hmm.
And then I've been in there a couple times, been in and out of there. I'd always went when you guys were super busy, so I never really got to like sit down, talk to anybody or like meet anybody. It'd always been like in and out, like go through a couple boxes, check the cases. You guys were busy. I was like, maybe pick up a card here or like a box. I think I ripped some WNBA in there a couple months ago. But you posted some stuff on Instagram. You were doing an Instagram sale, and that's how I connected with you.
Yeah.
Was I bought some stuff and I was like, I'm going to be at the shop. I'm going to the Strongsville. Like, can I just come in the shop and pick it up?
Yeah.
And it worked out good. Met you. We made some deals. So talk a little bit about One of One Card Shop, what you guys are all about. Like, obviously huge Instagram presence, kind of let's bring some light on the shop here a little bit.
Yeah. So first I just want to like thank Steve and, the guys for bringing me in. Obviously it's a really great opportunity. And, we're, just all about kind of making sure the customer is happy also while having a great time. Obviously you may know that Steve is kind of one of the most energetic breakers, most genuine guys. He's not there to rip you off. He wants, everyone, in his live video or if it's in the shop to have a good time. So we're trying to satisfy all that. And obviously I see that at least with, the PSA grading and then breaks and consignments and all that different stuff. And, obviously personal boxes in the shop, all a big variety of things really.
Yeah. So what's kind of your role in the shop? Obviously, like Steve's been breaking for a while. You guys have the breaks going. You just mentioned the grading. What's kind of your role when you get to work in there? I mean, we worked together. We did some trades. We did some buying, shelling out of cases. What is involved if you go there for a couple hours after school? What kind of your day look like?
Yeah, so I really do a little bit of everything. It's crazy, but I love it. But if I'm out there dealing with you or a customer, that's just going to be me working the counter. That's probably one of the more basic things there are. And then before the PSA shut down, I was Christian and I were the PSA guys, so we were constantly doing that. And
do you do the reviews as well for you guys review cards at One of One or?
Yeah, we both did. And now obviously we can only do Super Express or faster. Right. So it's literally a handful of cards a week when I get in there. We sent out I think one today that I packaged up and got ready, and otherwise it's just like today, for example, I sent out a card, one for PSA, and then I just priced pretty much the rest of the day, and then worked the counter. So we have, tons of bins in the back that we're trying to put in, on those benches that we have out front. And then we have the showcases where we love walk-in buys. We love when people come into the shop and, we'll, buy a deal from them and just keep adding to our inventory. But yeah, I mean, kind of, I bounce around a lot, anywhere from sorting breaks. I'll go live to do personals or breaks, but that'll be more in the summer. For myself, just because I'll be able to come in more, and then PSA, and then kind of just working the counter and pricing a little bit, and that's a little bit of everything.
I do. So PSA and grading is obviously like a hot topic in the hobby, if not the hottest topic. It seems like for sure. I do a podcast every week. I do a hobby rundown of like, here's the news, and every week it seemingly is PSA or grading, or to some extent something along those lines. Like this is the first week where I was kind of just like, dang, like there's not a whole lot of news. Like it's kind of stale this week, which is kind of exciting to me that there's other things going on. Mm-hmm. How many cards were you guys getting through the shop on a weekly basis? So now you're saying it's a handful a week of Super Express. Let's go back last summer. So like kind of as the craze was like building into the fall. And then obviously kind of probably peaked in the fall. It fell off maybe just a touch, and then it probably picked right back up at the first of the year. How many cards were you guys getting in those kind of times as far as per week and when it comes to economy and bulk?
Yeah, so every 1 to 2 weeks we'd be getting thousands of cards in. So anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 cards we'd be sending out. So it was obviously as a part-time worker, it was tough because I was the guy that was really handling the computer stuff. So it was hard to type in, all these
A
cards
thousand cards a week.
a short amount
Yeah.
of time. And obviously Christian does a great job over there prepping. And then just being able to kind of type things in kind of quickly was really crucial. But I got hired in the fall in November.
Gotcha.
That's when we opened up. But I know that even before Steve had a shop, he was still doing PSA. So his guy Nick, who's down in Columbus, shout out to that's going to be Buckeye Bean Sports, I believe is the at. So Nick used to run the PSA subs. He did it for I believe 6 months, maybe longer. I'm not really sure, but Nick and I before the shutdown were doing a lot of cards. It was a really big handful, and it's really fallen off. But I think the shutdown was necessary for the hobby because if you are going to raise the prices, you have to have some sort of quicker production to get these cards out because it's just taking too long and we're paying too much.
I heard the other day, I've heard kind of through the grapevine, through different TikTokers and subbers and people getting their subs back that like PSA is actually on a backlog of sending out cards now, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah.
They're sitting with cards ready to be shipped out and they can't get them out. Two questions. One's going to be along the lines of PSA, kind of talk about the grading, but the other one is kind of a tip for people when they're getting cards to the group submitter, whether it's you guys, whether it's whoever they're group submitting to. What's something that people could do better as far as preparing it and making it easier on you guys? Is it sorting them? Is it putting them in a certain order? Is it making sure obviously the top loaders aren't taped, or being in penny sleeve? Like what's kind of the couple things people should think about when they're dropping those cards off or sending them to you guys?
All right. So it's like two little things. It's nothing huge. So we have a form that we offer to all our customers. They need to sign and fill out. Literally just handwriting because sometimes an email or an Instagram name will be just impossible to read. But we work through that. It just takes a little bit more time. And then what you already mentioned, card savers and top loaders, those can be dirty and have regular Scotch tape on them sometimes, which everyone knows is a big no-no. What we really want to see kind of is a clean sleeve and top loader and a clean sleeve and card saver. And then if people that are subbing with us want to, they can put little pull tabs in them so it's easier for the graders to take out. We don't really care if they're there or not, but it just makes graders' lives a little bit easier.
Gotcha. So when it comes to PSA, from your experience, obviously being a part of the group submission, as well as obviously on the other end of it, buying and selling and receiving slabs, receiving submissions back, trying to flip those buy moons, kind of where do you see, because when PSA shut down, everybody was like, oh my God, raw prices are going to go, or slab prices are going to go up, or wax prices are going to go down. There's always like, everything has to have a reaction in the market. My thing is like, there's millions of cards in backlog. There's millions of cards that are going to come out still. Like I'm still getting subs back, got a sub back today. Like you're getting subs back. I have 2 huge economy subs that are just literally waiting for them to pop. Like people are still getting their cards back. So where do you see kind of the PSA market? And do you think it has any impact on wax or the raw market beyond, let's say, the shutdown? Because obviously the shutdown, people are like, there's nowhere to send like 2021 Prism cards right now, like unless you send it to outside of PSA. But do you see it having an influence on the market itself beyond the shutdown, or do you kind of just seeing a small little road bump and we're going to be back to normal as far as submitting?
I mean, things have really stayed pretty normal. Obviously, you make a great point saying that they're still trying to get subs out, so they're really not stopping. They're just trying to get, what's literally just been sitting. They're trying to grade that and get it out. I think though the price hike, I just think that with higher prices and especially with there only being one option right now, they could see a little increase. But I'm really a huge PSA 9 guy. It's kind of out of the ordinary.
Same. I mentioned it a lot. Yeah. I love PSA 9s.
Everyone loves Gem 10s. I obviously do myself, but a PSA 9 is still a mint card. And the fact that there's that big of a difference right now between a gem and just a mint card is kind of crazy to me. And, I like that 9s have seen an increase because I've been in the hobby seriously for 3 years, just taking, on eBay and Instagram and everything like that and Facebook. And I mean, 9s used to get no love. 9s used to be equivalent to raw. Now 8s are. That's something I really like to see. But just because a card came out of a pack, freshly pulled, whatever that BS
Pack.
is,
Yep, yep,
right?
yep.
And then it's
It's
out.
automatically worth a PSA 10 price when they pull it.
Yeah.
I love the TikTok when it's like they pull a big card and they're like, it's worth $3,000. I'm like, that card is worth $80 raw until you get in that PSA 10 holder.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
you get in the PSA 10 holder, come back and repost the TikTok with the 3K eBay comp. Until
Yeah.
then, post the raw comp. Like,
and you mentioned that that reminds me, Logan Paul was doing that Pokemon rip. And he's not
every
my
Charizard's a PSA 10.
Yeah, and he's not my favorite guy, but every single one that came out was, oh, this is 500K. And he, always ignores, that's not as a raw card, as a PSA 10. It's just little things like that are a little bit annoying, but, it is what it is.
I think there's two things off of that. I'm a PSA 9 guy too. We've actually done some deals on the Zions that I have. So like I actually purchased all of those Zions, or a lot of my Zion 9s, in Dallas last time. And how I did it was I used market movers and I found rare cards, colored optics, colored prisms, etc., that the ratio was bigger than 3 to 3.5 on the 10 to 9. I was like, this shouldn't be happening. Like 10 should not, or 9 should not be 5 times less than a PSA 10. Like it's just, especially like I bought like a red ice, like that red ice should nowhere near be 5.5 at the time when I bought it, less than a 10. Like there's not that many to be that less. Maybe on a base card where there's tens of thousands, I get maybe you have a big enough gap because there's that much population of the 10, but I agree 100% with you on the 9. I think that's a really interesting take on everything. I think if anything, it strengthens the PSA market. I think because it allows cards to come back and allows us to kind of hit the reset button. But so we kind of just talked a little about the PSA. Where do you see kind of when it comes to the next run up, the next attention? Obviously, the NFL draft is happening the night this is going to release, or the weekend of this release. So you have the NFL draft. You have obviously 2021. We still have 2020 product coming out of football, which obviously football season around the corner. Last year, we saw that huge run up into football season and then kind of a downward thing. The modern basketball card market's kind of hitting a little hard. It's still not really taken off yet for the playoffs.
Yeah.
The GOAT market's down. Like, where do you see the next kind of move as far as the hobby going and attention kind of running?
I'm really excited. So I think this upcoming year, I'm a huge Josh Allen guy. I'm obviously a Cleveland guy, but Josh Allen is kind of my, I've just gone with my gut with him. I've got a really big collection of him. He probably makes the most amount of value in my collection right now, just because I have that confidence. And he's a hold for me till December, and I really break it down this way. Is it rare or not? And I've really kind of just stayed towards color and autos, especially graded. And I think you mentioned market trends a little bit. Kind of obviously, we saw last year the football took a little dip kind of as the season started, because obviously all that hype is building up and everyone's bar is here, and they're great, but maybe their team is losing. Or
Trae Young's like the best example, I think, of that. Like scenario. Everybody hyped that Trae Young is going to have this amazing season, and he's had a really, really good season. A lot of people forget he's almost an all-star. Like, you could have argued he could have been an all-star. He's played really well. The Hawks are in a playoff position, and he's still, I even checked over the last 14 days, his stuff is still falling. I'm just like, that is the epitome of your trend right there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've been looking at his stuff because I think if he wins a playoff game before Luka Doncic does, I think the basketball card world for Trae just explodes, because then people will start looking into it like, all right, maybe there's something there, and there's something there for the Hawks as well. So who knows? I think he's severely undervalued right now. I've had Trae stuff since Trae stuff came out, I've been collecting him. So, I mean, hopefully he kind of goes up a little bit. I've got a bunch of his stuff tied up at PSA, but I'm excited to see, what the Hawks can do, and then if he actually starts getting some love soon.
So we've got the NFL draft, like I mentioned, happening. It's obviously QB loaded. Obviously the hobby loves the QBs. We have wide receiver heavy. But the thing about it is, if you look at last year's draft as well, it was QB heavy and wide receiver heavy.
Yeah.
My question's beyond kind of like, obviously Trevor Lawrence is going to be big. You name the quarterback, Jalen Hurts Justin Fields, et cetera, are going to be big. How do you see this group of guys, these wide receivers, these quarterbacks, especially affecting last year's group of quarterbacks and wide receivers? Or do you see them kind of not really being in any effect? It's still in the build-up of the season. You're going to see the Burrows and the Hurts and the Tuas and the Herberts run, but you're also going to see the Claypools and the CD Lambs and the T Higgins and the Justin Jeffersons, the guys who have really kind of came out and had a good year. Or do you see people moving towards the Devontae Smiths, the Jamar Chases, the Jalen Waddles versus last year's guys?
That kind of stuff kind of happens every year, honestly. People tend to flock towards the newer guys, but then there's always, this is where you kind of have to be selective. As you know, this is me more as an investor, I guess you could say, with cards, and you kind of just got to go with your gut on, you know, who you think is really going to take off from a previous class. You know, in 2019, again, for me, that was Josh Allen, because, you know, I just thought he had that potential there. And I thought he was a winner, and I, you know, just believed in him, and then he kind of just narrow it down, honestly. So, I mean, for me, I obviously think Herbert is a great talent, but then, you know, look at the team he's on. Burrow's a great talent, but look at the team he's on. There's so many factors that go into that, because, you know, if Burrow was playing great before he got hurt, but were the Bengals winning? No.
And like, if you look at, I look at beyond the team as well, look at the division, because obviously kind of what we talked about, Trey's a great player. The Hawks are solid, but it doesn't matter if they don't win in the playoffs. They're bouncing the first round. Trey's written off again until next year.
Exactly.
But let's look at Herbert. Herbert's got to play the Chiefs twice. So there's, let's say, 2 losses right off the bat. Then you've got other tough defenses in that division. You move over to Burrow in that division, you've got the Browns who are solid, you've got the Steelers who are solid, and you've got the Ravens who are solid.
Exactly.
I'm a Bengals fan, you're a Browns fan. So we're kind of in the same boat of like, it's not an easy division. It doesn't matter how good the quarterback is. So for me, it's like, I love Burrow. I love T Higgins. Like, I'm a T Higgins collector when it comes to it. So like, I'm putting my money in T Higgins, but it's beyond more than like, great, if his stuff blows up, like I'll probably sell some of it because I want the money off of it. But at the same time, it's like, if his stuff tanks, like it's just it's always gonna be in my collection. But I think you have to look at it like that. I like your kind of idea of like putting your eggs in one basket. I do like to diversify. I look at it but I get what I kind of like, I don't know, I like that idea because I don't do it enough. Like Zion for me was my big investment going into the playoffs. I sold off some of it a little bit as well to make some other moves, but like Zion for me going into the playoffs was something I'd put kind of like my money where my mouth is. Like, I was on the biggest Zion, like overhyped, like never going to buy a Zion card in my life all last summer. And then all of a sudden it come January, February, I'm like, dude, I'm buying all in on Zion. Like, he is my dude going into the playoffs. Like, you can't stop him. So I think for my football season, it's going to be like, I'm going to find a couple of dudes where I'm like all in on it. And then be like, hey, I'm going to pick up some Claypool. I'm going to pick up some Justin Jefferson, but it's going to be, like you said, that the color stuff, the little bit lower pop stuff. Maybe it's some buy and grade with someone else other than PSA, obviously, and kind of make a built in that little bit of return that way in case they hurt. But I like what you're saying. There's a lot that goes into kind of selecting going forward.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to diversify your collection, you know, if you're in an investing standpoint. But then again, there's so many obvious moves you can make when a market is dead. So, you know, this past season, you know, some QBs that got bounced in the playoffs or didn't even make the playoffs just dropped so much that, you know, you can hold them till August and sell them in August and just have confidence that it's going to, I mean, cards like that going, you know, before a season, from the end of a season to right before the start of a season, inevitably are going to go up. And that is just
kind of guy comes to mind for me is Drew Lock. Like, Drew Lock was hyped. He got hurt. His stuff has hit the floor. Like, you can get his stuff for pennies. And my thought is, I picked some stuff up when I was in Dallas because some dude had it in his case. I'm like, what's the bottom dollar on it? And I got it way below eBay comps because he just wanted to move it. And for me, it's like, okay, I think it was like, what, $60 on a Prism PSA 10 for Drew Lock right now. What happens if he doesn't get the starting job? That card falls to $35, $40. I'm out, I'm out $30. But that card could easily run to 150, 200. He gets announced as a starting job, and then the Broncos look good in the preseason. So for me, it's like, this is same thing you're saying is buying into a guy like Josh Allen, who kind of has a track record now. He's got a following. He's got the team around him, but also kind of taking that risk on somebody who doesn't have that necessarily, like, like let's look at wide receivers. Like I keep bringing up like Justin Jefferson, Claypool. Like you can pick up their colored optic stuff raw for 15, $20. Like
Yeah,
what
cheap.
happens if they don't really pan out? Like it's $5, $10. Like you're out $100 if you buy
Exactly.
10 of them. Like
Yeah.
there's not much risk to those kind of diversifications when it comes to football versus where basketball trying to pick up raw like colored stuff of the higher end guys who actually have a legitimate shot is just like way more expensive.
Yeah, and honestly, I like that because I think I need to do more of that. I usually buy really, really safe positions, especially during the football season. So, I'm buying guys like Baker and Lamar and Allen and Mahomes, who I'm confident that are not going to
Mm-hmm.
have another QB drafted to that team where they could potentially have a competition and become the backup and stuff like that. Um, obviously, as you get into the season, there's a little bit more risk there because you really got to go with the guys that are going to win and that are going to play, almost at an MVP level. But I think, in terms of the Drew Lock PSA 10 that you said, I think I need to do a little bit more, low risk, high reward investing where you can get a card that used to be $400, I believe Locks used to be, and now they're
Yeah.
60. Because, why not try? Just take a shot in the dark, because why not? It's not that much money, and, the reward could be there.
Yeah, I think too, this kind of goes back to your nine statement. You pick up guys who are low risk or you pick up nines of high end players. It allows you to pick up multiples. I'm kind of big on multiples. So I like having two or three of the same card because it allows me, let's say there's a big run up into June and July. Let's say over the next 8 weeks, there's a huge run up. It's like I'm baked in, 80% profit in this card. Let's sell off one, put the money elsewhere, find the next run up. Let the stuff, maybe another card ride till week 1 or 2. Then it's like, all right, I'm going to sell off my Drew Lock PSA 10 week 1. He plays well. He has a good week. Sell it off, make 200%. But I have one left. It's like, shoot, maybe the Broncos make a run to the playoffs and this thing keeps going. I can put one in my back pocket and hold it, and I'm already baked in profit. I'm sitting at zero, if not in the positive on this card. So I'm not going to lose anything, even if it goes down. So for me, I think that is another way to look at these kind of like football plays is being able to bake in some different selling points because like you mentioned, it's very high risk to go outside of QBs for competition wise, for injury risk. So if you diversify with nines or with like low risk investments, it's another way to kind of potentially like bake in some profit, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think that's, a really good idea. I think, if the price is there and, PSA 10 of QBs or receivers that you think could really pop off, I think it's definitely there. I mean, why not? I like that.
Exactly.
I'm gonna roll with that.
All right, couple more things here. You obviously talked a little about your PC, about your personal collection, being a Browns fan. You got a couple guys you've mentioned throughout the interview here so far. What's your first big card you really remember getting in your personal collection? This could be way back to like before you were really branded as AM SportsCards. Like, what's the first player or person or card that you started like getting? And then what's your current like grail card that everybody, if somebody asked you, show me the card that defines you, like what's that card?
Yeah. Well, to start, I would probably say it was a LeBron, really, really low end rookie. To this day, it's probably still $1. I don't even remember what it was called. It might have been like 04, actually, probably second year. It was an insert from Upper Deck, I think. But I think I just kept that card with me for a super, super long time. And then probably the grail for me is in Dallas when I went in November. I was able to snag a first edition LeBron rookie, which I don't really plan on moving ever. I don't really bring it out. I just keep it here at my house. It's a BGS 85, and I just think really anything from comics to I don't know, books maybe to cards that say first edition on them are huge. So that's just a card that is, I mean, obviously an investment, but also even if it tanks, I wouldn't care because I just think it's just that cool.
Yeah, it's special. I think a lot of people underestimate or like underappreciate, I guess it's a better word, of like having that card. It's kind of like this is my card. And it doesn't have to be like it even doesn't have to be like, to me, the grail doesn't always have to be even the most expensive card in your collection.
Yeah,
like
sure.
I think it's like what you attach is like, this is cool. Like this is what I appreciate. This is why I got into this, like this hobby. And so I think some people sometimes think like I have to have a $5,000 card or a $10,000 card or a $20,000 card to have a grail. It's like always about like spending up to your grail. Your
Yeah.
grail could be, your grail could be a PSA 10, what LeBron James diaries, like upper deck when he's just like chilling in his warmups, because you like
Exactly.
LeBron James and like I want a cool, like my next kind of cool card I want to get is like a St. Vincent St. Mary's, like
Yeah.
LeBron James like card. Like it doesn't even have to be like a jersey card. Like I know there's the jersey ones, but like just picking up like a nice graded one eventually is probably on my bucket list of like
Yeah.
a grail card. Like I just picked up the immaculate 1 of 1 T Higgins like swoosh card. Like
Oh,
the
that's
card's a
sweet.
couple $100. Like, but at the same time, it's like it's a cool card for me to have now in my
Yeah.
collection. It's like exactly what you're saying. Like
I mean,
I was
why
talking to
not?
my dad about it. I was like, I'm gonna buy this, and he's like, well, what happens if they draft Jamar Chase? It's like I don't care if he knock on wood. I don't care if he gets hurt or gets kicked off the team week 1. It's still
Yeah.
a dude that I watched and like now have his 1 of 1 switch. So it's like kind of a
Yeah.
cool.
I like that for sure. And then I
So
do one thing.
what's up?
I'm doing a little like PC project right now, kind of. So I'm doing the select field level golds of Browns players. So
Okay.
I currently own the Nick Chubb. I actually just won last night the Miles Garrett gold field level to 10 BGS 95 on eBay. So I'm super excited to get that one to come in. And then the next one, hopefully, will be the Baker. But so far I've seen one, couldn't really get a reasonable price on it, but hopefully one will pop up eventually. But that's another kind of PC thing that I really just have been focusing on recently, just kind of building the PC. Nothing I really have to worry about, just because I'm at a point where it's like, why not add to the PC? It's something that really, drives the passion part too, just of collecting.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'm really excited to kind of build on that project. Hopefully I can really build up, however many players I can get that are on the.
You picked up the Nick Chubb at the show, right? The other
I
weekend.
did, yeah.
So we can lean into that. It was like going to be kind of like one of the last things I was asking. So we ran into each other at the Strongsville show. I talked about this on
Yeah.
the podcast last week. I was set up there. It was show number 2 of the weekend for me last weekend. You were walking around there making deals, buying and selling. Let's look at it from 2 different perspectives. You're a high school kid going to a card show that's, I would say, predominantly run by older men who are been dealers or working in the hobby for a long time. So
Yeah.
you're younger, more on the modern side, obviously
Mhm.
collecting a little bit of the older guys, but mainly obviously you're into the hotter stuff.
Yeah.
What's your tip for people who are more in the modern market and younger like you going to a sports card show? Because it's not always about the modern market at a sports car show, especially the local ones. The bigger ones are obviously a little bit more diversified. And then what's kind of another general tip you have when it comes to buying and selling from you as a show goer, I guess, when we're bringing our cases, we're bringing our cards, we're trying to buy, sell, trade. What's your tip for everybody? Kind of a general thing.
I really think communication is important. Just first, especially if you're a younger kid out there that's going to a show and there's obviously always a ton of adults and you're going to have vintage dealers there too that are usually the older guys there. Just communicating, being respectful is huge. First of all, and then I think it's super important. If you're going to a show and you don't really know what to buy, is just to be open, kind of learn the market. I have anywhere from a brand new card from this year, a LaMelo Ball, to a Sandy Koufax rookie. So I think it's important to again really diversify that. I love vintage and I love new cards. It's something that um, ever since 2014 or 15 that my dad told me every time you go to a card show, buy one vintage graded card, and I've kind of just stayed on that trend. And I think it was a great decision by him. Just a little piece of advice to give me, and obviously kind of every aspect of cards has gone up a lot since 2015, and the vintage market is, again, it's kind of like the vintage stuff, for the younger kids that may not really understand it, is like the S&P 500 of the card
Mm-hmm.
market. You don't
Yep.
have to worry about vintage. My Koufax rookie I bought at $400 or $500 at I don't know, Strongsville or Independent show, and just I threw it in a box, and you can just forget about those kind of things, and they just slowly increase in value. So I think it's
It's a lot
important.
easier to invest in guys like that from, we'll just say, from Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant back,
Yeah.
when it comes to like that vintage era, that you don't have to worry about them having a huge preseason game or LeBron James tweeting about like this dude's going to be the next hottest thing, and then all of a sudden you got to go through
Yeah.
every single box and find every Talon Horton Tucker and sell them within
Yeah.
the next 30 seconds. Otherwise, you're losing out on all of your investment.
Mhm.
One last question. This kind of goes back a little bit. I was going to ask you something about growing. I guess we can, if we had time, we could wrap with that.
Mhm.
What's your opinion on all of these new platforms to sell on? So we got obviously eBay and Facebook are kind of the bread and butter, I think, for
Yeah.
me. Obviously, card shops kind of are the
Yeah. If you live by
the hobby
one,
safe place.
yeah. So, if you live by one and it's a quality shop, I'd hope to think that people think that one of one is a quality shop and come in there and, be comfortable and, sell and buy and make trades and different things like that. We're always open to any of those things. Um, but definitely, like you said, eBay and Facebook and Instagram, are very mainstream. And I think, something like My Slabs, obviously, you know, it's something that's very new. Obviously, 1% seller fees is very nice, but it's slow. That's the problem. So I think, something like an app maybe could be really, really huge for that because a lot of collectors would, especially me at least, would rather click an app than go to Safari and type in,
What do you think of a place like Starstock? What's your opinion on Starstock?
what do they do? I'm not familiar with it.
So Starstock is as a
All right,
platform
maybe.
where you buy and sell without actually ever having to own the physical card. So it's kind of like a mixture of ComC
Okay.
and like kind of like an NFT. So
Yeah.
like you go into Starstock and they have the raw graded Starstock A, Starstock B, Starstock C. You can buy let's say, and the
Oh, I
NBA season
know
was
what it
big
is.
earlier in the year when COVID was big because guys were
Mhm.
sitting out. Like
Yeah.
the big thing was the Celtics guys. You could buy like Celtics guys pre-game. They
Yeah.
play, they have a 20-point game, their cards would go up. You never have
Mhm.
to get them to you. I had an issue when I sent in a bunch of stuff. I bought a bunch of stuff, sent it in, but by the time it got logged, all the stuff had been drowned by everybody else sitting in the same stuff, and I lost money on it. But
Yeah.
I'm about to send 10 or 15 slabs there because they only charge 5% on
Mhm.
stuff, and I don't have to worry about shipping it. There's no returns. There's just kind of send it. It sits in an inventory. They're working on an app, I guess. Supposedly, I guess it's around
Yeah.
the corner. Which is, I agree 100% with you. That's my biggest downfall of like Starstock. If Starstock had an app, I don't know if I'd ever not be on Starstock because it's kind of
Yeah.
like the convenience of eBay and the
Right.
automation of it. I was just curious because obviously a lot of the hobby is built on old ways. I think that's
Yeah.
something I've noticed very much over the last year is like
Definitely.
there's a lot of old, like if somebody breaks the trends in the market, like the LeBron James card getting sold for 5.2 million,
Yeah.
people were trying to say it was bad for the hobby because it raises prices on everything. I
Mhm.
just was like wanted to comment back to everybody and
It
said,
really doesn't.
how many people do you work with in the hobby on a daily basis are worrying about buying a LeBron James $5.2 million card?
Yeah.
Yet I had 9 text messages from people who knew I did sports cards who texted me about the LeBron James card. They either sent me the article, called me, or text me about it. I'm like,
Exactly.
that is great for the hobby. I had
Mhm.
a dude who was like, literally, can we set up a Zoom call next week? I want to learn how to do sports cards.
Exactly. And
Like
it brings more
selling a
people.
$5.2 million card is great, but people just think it's like, so I was just kind of curious, like, because it's such a new thing to
Yeah.
buy and sell at different platforms. I was kind of curious what your experience was with those.
I think it's more people that see that price and say, "Oh no, is this peak? Is this, gonna fall?" But I really think that stuff like that of LeBron and things, and MJ's and stuff like that. I think that that stuff is actually gonna just slowly go up, hopefully. But obviously, base and veteran base, like that stuff was bound to crash at some point, and it kind of already has. But it definitely is good for the hobby, I think. And it was really exciting to see that sale, especially because it beat out the 9.5 out of 23 sold for like,
1.7,
yeah,
what at
1.7,
1.8.
1.8.
And the subgrades on the 9 was actually really, really good. They just had that
Mhm.
185 that kind of like lagged it behind. But I think a lot of people, when you look at that card, like it's kind of like your 8.5 first edition. Like that card could be a 7.5, a 7.5 to you, and you're just like, I want to own the card. Like
Yeah.
to me, the grade is like it's kind of like the whole grade of one of one, like whether you grade a one of one or not.
Mhm.
Like the grading more or less just encapsulates the card and kind of just like certifies it, holds it. The grade is the grade. Like I don't think the dude buying it was like, oh my god, the 9.5 sold for 1.7. I don't want to pay over that because it's a 9. Like he's not looking at comps.
Mhm.
We look at comps and it's like, oh my god, a 9 sold for this.
Yeah,
I
those
could never
are
pay for more than so. it'll be cool to see kind of where that market goes. I think I agree with you. I think the MJ, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, like GOAT market will continue to rise. I think it'll be in a much healthier path. I think the February, January craze was just like too much for it to hold, obviously. But I could easily see it making a gentle, nice, healthy run up very soon too.
Yeah, I think the whole Kobe, LeBron, MJ boom wasn't sustainable, because if you think about it like stocks, it just kind of went up just straight like that, and it all just went to the moon way too fast, and that's not going to hold, and everything's being pumped. And I think hopefully this, upcoming summer, whenever it may be, whenever it could hopefully see a healthier rise, I think it would be, great for those guys' cars. Because
have you ever got caught in a run up like that and tried to chase a card? That was one of my biggest mistakes I talked about in the prior podcast. Was I got caught up in the run up and chased the paper tops Kobe Bryant, and I chased it and I got in late and chased that. So like, what have you ever got caught in a chase or messed up when you came to, there's a run up coming or there's a run up happening, I got to get in before it's too late?
So I mean, not really with LeBron or MJ. I actually got in at really good times on those. But the Kobe, I think I moved the Kobe. I think I got it. It was a tops 9, and I got it around
Same,
like 13. Or it was like somewhere between 12 and 14, and I think
I paid $12.50 for mine.
Yeah, I think I moved it right around there, but right after I moved it, it absolutely tanked. And I mean, I got lucky. I really wasn't expecting it to tank that fast. I thought it was still a good investment, but I think they'll, correct in a positive way at some point. And I think they're really,
we're in the same boat. You're sitting with a tops paper 9, you paid like 12 to 14 for. I'm sitting with tops paper 9, I paid like 12 to 13 for. I had it out at Strongsville. I don't know if it was still out when you were there. I had it out at Strongsville. And for me, it's kind of a PC card at the same time. So it's like, to me, when it tanked, it was obviously like, dang, I learned my lesson. But at the same time, I was like, this card could go down to 800. I'm probably not going to sell it. But I had it out in my case, and I put it out for like 1,400 in my case. And I was just like, a bunch of people were like, oh, what do you have in the Kobe paper? And I was just like 14. And they're like, well, comps are like 1,000. I'm like, dude, I don't really care if I sell it. Like, I kind of just have it out to have it out.
Yeah.
And then some dude tried to start like trading and buying it off of me for 14. I didn't think anybody would ever pull the trigger on me. Yeah. And so I was just like, he like walked away and he's like, I got to think about it. And I was like, dude, I really don't want to even sell it for 14 right now. I kind of just want to sit on it for like a longer, like hold it. Like, I don't need to sell it. So I kind of just like took it out of the case, put it back in my box, and he came back and I was like, oh man, like, I don't think I can sell it. Like, even for 14, I was just like, but I thought no one would ever bite on it for that far over comps. But I think the market's still there. But yeah.
I think, I've been thinking about it a little bit. Obviously you see vintage guys and, vintage football. And I mean, obviously vintage baseball, in my opinion, is probably one of the safest investments you can make in cards. And there's vintage basketball as well. But I think eventually everything LeBron, MJ, Kobe, even the base rookies are going to be much, much bigger than they are now, but it's going to be a much longer term thing. So, over the next, decade, maybe, definitely, I think it's definitely important for a lot of, younger kids to get cards like that are, my age and stuff like that. So I think eventually, those 3 GOATs kind of will eventually have a market like, the vintage stuff, like 50s and 60s stuff. It's obviously going to take a long time. It may not be a decade. It could be 2 decades. It could be 3 decades. But at some point, those select guys are just going to have ridiculous markets. And I think right now, even though we see a dip right now, and, we think they were high a few months ago, I think they're going to go much, much higher and the way farther future.
So who did you, last question, I promise, last question, you probably got a lot to do. Who did you, like, for me, it was like, I grew up watching LeBron James, like, Kobe Bryant, like, you're obviously 10 years younger than me. So who did you grow up? Like, who was your dude? Like, I wore Allen Iverson. I remember my first pair of basketball kits was Allen Iverson, like Reeboks, like,
I got the AI.
There you go. Like, that was my first pair of basketball shoes. I remember they had like baby blue bottoms. They had hole in the bottom with like the honeycomb things. Like, I had all LeBron James shoes growing up. Like, what was were you like AI LeBron James still kind of dudes, or like who was the dude you watched and turned on TV to watch?
I'm definitely a little too young for AI, but I mean, growing up as a Cleveland fan, it was literally LeBron every single night that
Mm.
every single night that they had a game, I'd be watching them. And I still remember I was on vacation when he made his decision to go to South Beach, and my heart was absolutely crushed that day. And I also remember when he came back, I was at camp, and it's just like sports camp of like 200 to 300 kids, and everyone just starts going like absolutely nuts, and it was a great feeling. But LeBron was definitely the guy that I started off, my childhood watching, because obviously there wasn't much from the Indians, and there wasn't much from the Browns. Obviously, not too much winning there. But yeah, definitely, LeBron, and I remember Daniel Gibson and Zildjiūnas Ilgauskas. All those guys were kind of like the squad that I grew up
Anderson
with.
Varejao, like,
Yeah, the
yeah,
Wild.
yeah. I grew up like a Pacers fan. I was close to Indianapolis where I grew up,
Yeah,
but I was like kind of a Cavs fan, like being
mhm,
from Ohio, but I was close to Indianapolis. So I grew up in
yeah,
like the Jamal Tinsley, just on the edge of Reggie Miller, like Al
mhm,
Harrington kind of phase.
yeah,
Uh,
mhm.
so I think a lot of people are gonna miss LeBron James when LeBron James is gone. I think a lot of
Oh
people hate on him, but I think especially people who are like, let's say like 35 years old to like 15 years old, that 20-year gap that's been able to experience like most of LeBron James's career
yeah, mhm,
is the same people who experienced Michael Jordan's career, but they're going to see it from a different perspective because like there was no highlights of Michael Jordan on Instagram, you know?
yeah.
Now it's like LeBron James is like the central focus of the NBA and the sports world. Now it's going to be crazy when he steps away from the game for sure.
Oh yeah, that's another great point. I mean, I think when he retires, I mean, his card market is just gonna go bonkers as well. um,
LaMarcus Aldridge's Top Shot market went crazy when he retired. What is
yeah,
LeBron James's market going to do when he retires?
exactly.
I mean, no offense to LaMarcus Aldridge. I think LaMarcus Aldridge should be a Hall of Famer. I
Yeah,
know a lot of
great
people are kind
player.
of on the fence, but like his market went crazy.
Two different tiers.
What is it going to do? Like,
Yeah, I mean, LeBron's up here, and LaMarcus Aldridge is a few tiers lower. I mean, LeBron's the best player in the NBA, so I think
LeBron
it's
is LeBron.
crazy.
LeBron is LeBron.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I think it's a good place to wrap it up. I appreciate you
Mhm.
joining me,
Yeah, for
taking
sure.
the time. And we'll stay in touch for sure. I'll
Yeah,
be over at the shop probably sometime soon, but appreciate it. Make sure to go follow Austin AM _ sports cards on Instagram, and one of one card shop. Hit up all those guys. If you're ever in Northeast Ohio area, obviously check them out. It is worth the trip over and checking out the shop. They got a huge amount of inventory, and like you said, they got more coming out on a regular basis. So appreciate you guys, and thanks for joining.
yeah, for sure. Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me. I'll stay in touch.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
All right, guys. What a great interview with Austin. Really appreciate him coming on. Really cool to learn from him. I mean, I'm 10 years older than him, and I learned a lot about things that he's done, ways that he's grown his channel. His perspective from working in a card shop was great. We talked a little bit about obviously the PC, not necessarily having to have the biggest card, the most expensive card be your Grail card. I think a lot of people overlook that or expect different things when it comes to your Grail card. So I was excited to hear him talk about his personal collection, going to card shows, working at the card shop, and balancing his very busy life. Really appreciate him. Make sure you go check him out. AM _sportscards on Instagram, and obviously one of one card shop in Strongsville or on social media. Make sure to check them out and give them a follow. Really appreciate him again. So now I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, just want to wrap this up with two things. We're going to do the upcoming releases at the end here, but I want to talk a little bit about SGC, CSG, and obviously CGC as they kind of go hand in hand together. SGC raised their prices when PSA shut down. There's been some, you can obviously go through group subbers as you've seen, anywhere from like $35 to $39. I think group subbers are kind of taking SGC cards. I've seen turnarounds be less than a month. On different group subbers have said that the turnarounds have been less than that, right around 2 to 4 weeks, I guess. It's something to keep in mind. I'm not an SGC lover. I'm not an SGC hater. I've posted some stuff on Instagram saying that I'm not a big fan of the tuxedo black slabs. For me, the tuxedo black slab overshadows a lot of cards, but that doesn't mean that I'm an SGC hater. I agree with a lot of people in their logic behind SGC. I think SGC for $35 a card still kind of is on that borderline of whether or not sending bulk submissions there is worth it. I think certain cards in an SGC holder can look nice. I think certain cards in SGC holder can have value. either in the short term or the middle term. Not sure, obviously, where SGC is going to be long term. No one knows. If anyone tells you they think SGC or they know SGC is going to be the second or the third best grading company in the space, doesn't know that. They're just making an assumption. So, but I think there is a space for them short term and middle term. I think people are showing that through Instagram. SGC, though, in the past has been hard to move. So make sure to keep that in mind if you do an SGC sub, that it could be potentially a little harder to move, especially as comps are less. You're basing it off of PSA comps. You're basing it off of BGS comps. It's a little tougher space to find a price point that is agreeable between the two parties, the buying and selling party. But at the same time, if you're baking in profit, let's say you're buying a $10 card, you're grading it for $35, you're all in $45. Obviously, the difference between $95 or $110 is something. I mean, it's 15%, 10%, but at the same time, you've locked in profit. You're at that point just deciding nickel and diming over settling on a price. I potentially might be using SGC for some cards, especially if I can get some football deals going into the season. Otherwise, I'm going to look at CSG. CSG's currently has raised their prices. CSG has also extended their turnaround times, as they have been somewhat overwhelmed with cards. But I want to say that I think CSG very long term. Again, this is my opinion. I just said that about SGC. Don't know where SGC is going to be. CSG, I don't know where they're going to be. They have the backing to potentially be a competitive person in the space, a grading company in the space going forward. They have the backing of their of the other collectors society when it comes to NGC, which is coins, NCS, which is numismatics conservatives, PMG, which is paper currency, CGC, which is comics, trading cards, etc. And they have a few more under the collectibles group, certified collectibles group. They did raise their prices as of April 28th, as of the release of this podcast. Anything completed before, they extended that date to June 28th. Currently, they are services and fees. They are a subgrading company, just like BGS, for those of you, we kind of talked about it before. Currently, the fees are $30 for standard, which is a 32-day turnaround time. And economy is $20, 75 business days, working days. And bulk is $12, 80 days. You have to add $10 for subgrades. I still think there's value in this. $22 with a subgrade bulk, get it back in 80 days. Isn't horrible. Obviously, it's a while. $30 plus the $10 grading fee is 32 days. So that's $40. Similar to SGC on price point there with subgrades. 32 days is obviously slightly longer than SGC is currently coming back at. But I think there's value. I think CSG is very stickler on grading. I think they're very precise on grading. I don't think they're hard on grading. I think they're honest. I think the hobby is a little more accepting of that. People like the slabs in hand a lot better than they've liked in the pictures. There was a lot of negativity around the green label. Now people are liking those slabs in their hand. Something to consider going forward is CSG and looking at their pricing, looking at submitting cards to them. I'm probably going to diversify amongst SGC and CSG through a couple of group submitters. If you're looking at trading cards, if you're looking at Pokemon or Magic the Gathering, CGC, which is CSG's sister company, also raised their prices. They're currently at $25. This is minus the subgrade fee. $25 for economy, 142 days on that turnaround. Standard is $35, 31 days, so pretty quick there. And bulk is $15 at 144 days. Their subgrades, though, are now also $10, and it adds 5 days of working time to add subgrades. So just something to keep in mind as you are looking to grading options. I've been listening to some interviews with Nat Turner as he started to do those things. He wants to open it back up to have a bulk and economy submission levels. He wants to get the pricing back down. He's talked a lot about how PSA is a collector's company. They want to allow collectors to submit cards for sets, for personal collections. There's a lot of talk about we shouldn't be submitting all cards, or you shouldn't be able to submit or want to submit base of, let's say, Jalen McDaniels NBA hoops. But if you're doing a PSA 10 set of the NBA hoops guys, you got to submit a Jalen McDaniels. And you got to have that opportunity that's not $100 to submit a $10 card, a $5 card. So I think it'll be interesting in the next couple months. Grading always seems to come up on the podcast. It comes up on social media on a regular basis. But wanted to kind of give you guys a little more insight into SGC. Their turnaround times, CSG and CGC have raised prices over the last couple of days. Still, I think are reasonable players in the space going forward. And I will probably be using both companies over the next couple weeks. And then when PSA opens back up, as they kind of tier their things back out, reevaluating where I'm going to go come fall and into the winter. The final segment we got is the hobby release calendar. We had Bowman Baseball released yesterday, Wednesday, and Prism UFC MMA released on Wednesday as well. Prism UFC is around $1,000 a box. I believe it released around $875 on Panini, but it's going for a little over $1,000. Not sure where that is. Obviously, it's kind of like the Topps F1 Chrome series. There's a big checklist. There's a lot of cards in there that aren't worth a lot, but there's a lot of cards that are worth a lot. So you kind of, there's a high risk, high reward there. $1,000 a box is a lot. I would still suggest just going out and taking singles, investing in the guys that you want to kind of play with when it comes to the singles in the certain fighters you want to buy out of that. Other things to keep in mind that are going to release over the next week prior to the next podcast release. Flawless Football 2020 releases on May 5th, Wednesday. And then also on that Wednesday, 2020-2021 Panini Crown Royale basketball releases, LaMelo's Crown Royale. It's kind of a cool set, a lot of art to that set. It doesn't have a lot of traction in the hobby when it comes to people craving over that, but at the same time, just something to keep in mind. Crown Royale basketball drops Wednesday along with Panini Flawless 2020. The briefcases will be released. Any kind of big release we have over the next couple weeks. May 12th is the Upper Deck Artifacts Golf release. That'll be cool. You got guys like Justin Thomas, Ricky Fowler going to have cards in that set. You're going to get those. And then you've got, I'm looking for the Prism draft picks. Okay, June 9th is Donruss Optic Basketball 2020-2021. So you have Optic dropping then. And for now, it does not look like I see over the next couple weeks anything else that's of major release prior to the middle of June over the next month. 2021 Panini Chronicles Draft Picks Football drops June 16th. That's kind of the next check mark on the 2020-2021 list here. And then the Stadium Club Baseball, National Treasures Basketball drops the end of June. Other than that, big releases over the summer here. Formula F1 Racing Topps, June 21st. A lot of Topps releases. Already on deck. Panini does not have necessarily everything posted yet, but just keep an eye on the calendar. I'll try to bring you guys that on a weekly basis. And good luck if you are ripping UFC or Crown Royale basketball next week, or if you're opening up Flawless Football. Good luck with those openings. Oh, one more I missed. Panini Chronicles Football 2020 releases on Friday. So just make sure to check that out. I believe that should be a retail product as well. So just kind of keep an eye on that. 2020 Chronicles, you're chasing the Herbies, you're chasing the Burrows, you're chasing the Justin Jeffersons and the Higgins, the Chase Youngs out of Panini Chronicles. I appreciate you guys joining me for this week. I appreciate Austin, AM _SportsCards on Instagram. I appreciate all of that. If you haven't already, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button. Make sure to click that subscribe. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave a review. Head on over to Instagram and Medalist _SportsCards. We can connect over there. Love having chats over there. Just crossed over 500 followers and appreciate everybody so far. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week with an episode, hoping to potentially bring on another guest. Otherwise, you'll just have me back, but I'll reconvene with you guys in a week. Have a great weekend. Have a great week, and appreciate you guys.